Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're doing Strength and Honor, the Mithridatic Wars. So the Mithridatic Wars took place in BCE, as you can see here, the Kingdom of Pontus versus the Romans. And today we're just having a little bit of a fight and some sort of mythical, made-up, fictional sort of battle that took place during this war. So here's the plains, somewhere maybe in the middle of Iran or somewhere around there. We've got some hills and some woods on either side, a little bit of kind of a couple of rises, a little bit more towards the middle, and maybe a farmstead or a built-up area, agricultural area there. But most of it is generally flat and open, which would suit the Pontic pike blocks. So the Romans here have 4 legions, 2 units of skirmishers, and a unit of Roman cavalry, as well as their baggage. And the Pontic forces here, you can see 4 blocks of pike phalanxes, a couple of units of cavalry, a unit of thureophoroi at the back there, a unit of skirmishers, and at the front, a unit of scythed chariots and their baggage at the back. Now, the command boards, the Romans got a little bit better on their command boards. They ended up with a couple of points in attack defense and so on there, and they've got an army break of 16. The Pontic forces, a little bit less on their board. They put more into defense to kind of protect their pike blocks, perhaps, and their army break is 17. So this is how the forces kind of laid out on the table. Things started from the right of the picture and progressed towards the left. The Pontic line is a little bit longer than the Roman line. You've got some skirmishers there, and you can see the scythed chariots kind of middle, a little bit on the right there, lining up against those legions. So here's the Roman forces and the Pontics ready to go. Now, both sides deployed some of their skirmishers. The Pontics deployed their 1 unit of skirmishers across their pike blocks. The Romans deployed 1 unit of skirmishers across their legions, the general's veteran legion there, taking up 3 of those skirmishers. But the other skirmisher stayed as a block unit, a large unit of skirmishers. So that will come into play later on. So here's the forces ready to go, and you can see the bottom left of the picture there, the formed unit of skirmishers for the Romans, kind of protecting the flank. Okay, so Pontus took the first turn here. They moved forward most of their pike blocks. One of them got a little bit left behind, but generally a fairly organized advance here. And the Romans decided to try and move up a little bit. They were a little bit worried about the scythed chariots the first time we'd faced off against them here. We know that they need a long runway to get going, so tried to close the distance early. However, after 2 of the legions moved forward, the others all managed to fail to move, and so this is where things stood. So now we've got a legion a little bit closer to those chariots. Let's hope they don't do too much damage on the charge. So the Pontic forces here moved their last phalanx there to put into line with the others, started to swing their general's cavalry round to the left flank here. And then they had a go at trying to charge in the scythed chariots. The way that the chariots work is the longer the distance they charge over, the better their attack value. They've built up lots of momentum. But here, rolling a 3 wasn't going to get them into contact, so that was an aborted charge and a reversal of fortune play past to the Romans. The Romans, for their part, again tried to close the distance on the chariots, and then once again failed with 2 units to move forward. That triggers a reversal of fortune, so 2 legions hanging in the wind there a little bit. The Pontic forces then moved up their pike phalanxes and then charged in with the chariots, trying to sort of disrupt things here a little bit. But the way that this worked, they didn't get much of a runway here, and with the support factors and other things factored in, the chariots only got a 3 dice attack where the Romans choose. So they rolled a 6, a 4, and a 3. The Romans chose the 3 as the worst result, a stand, and then proceeded to roll a 3 to cancel that out. So in this result, nothing happened. So the chariots came charging in, maybe the skirmishers slowed them down a little bit, but no result in that combat. So maybe they're not as bad as what we think after all. So this is where things stood at the end of the Pontic turn. They've got a fairly solid line, and their general attached to his unit of cavalry at the bottom here, looking to try and turn the flank. So the Romans started off. They've got a 3 dice fight, their choice, on these chariots here. They rolled 3 ones to start with. Not good, right? So they decided, let's roll that again. Used one of their command points, got a much better result, drove those chariots back. The chariots failed their discipline test and also ran back into the phalanx behind them, which was going to disrupt the phalanx as well. So actually, this is obviously not the way to use scythed chariots. The phalanx fell back, became disordered, and picked up 2 setback cards in total. So yeah, definitely not the way to use scythed chariots. So here's how things stood at the end of the Roman turn. They didn't get much more in the way of movement off after that. They had some failed movement rolls, and so this is where things stood. So the Pontic forces moved their phalanxes forward again, starting to get into striking distance, again swinging their general round onto the flank a little more. Over here, they tried to recover the pike phalanx with a reform check. Failed the first one, used a defense command point to roll it again, and got even worse on the second result. And the result of that failure, a 4 on the table, is a rout. So that phalanx routed the table. Oh, what a disaster. So yes, definitely not the way to use scythed chariots. Now the Romans on their turn now moved up their legions to try and set up a charge for their general here with this legion as veteran legion. So he's going to try and charge in there with lots of bonuses with support on either side. Got in there and rolled his dice to get a result. Rolled a 1 and a 3. That's a stand. So decided he didn't like that. Spent a generalship point. Rolled it again. Got a better result with a 6. Drove back that phalanx and also disordered it. So Pontic forces here picking up more setback cards, and this is looking pretty good for the Romans at this stage. And the general's unit followed up to keep the pressure on. Over on the side here, the skirmishers tried to turn to face off against the cavalry. They wanted to right wheel here. However, they failed the maneuver roll. And so that's where things stood. So on the Pontic turn, they managed to swing their cavalry around into the flank. They were getting really worried that their centre was falling apart with those pike blocks, so they thought they needed to push the issue here. They're exposing their own flank to the Roman cavalry, but maybe they can do lots of damage before the Roman cavalry can get in. They charged in here against the Romans. They didn't roll a very good result at all. Initially, a 1 and a 2, rolled it again with a command point and got a 1 and a 3, which is a stand. So yeah, no joy there. Charged in with a Thureophoroi. Again, they got a stand result there. Okay, now over here, the pike phalanxes going in against the legion here get a 2 dice fight and manage to push back that Roman unit. The Romans here passed just their discipline test with a 6. They rolled a 6, and so they're doing better than the last games already, where the Romans kept failing discipline tests. Here, they're starting to make a couple. Over here, the general tried to move forward. He wanted to move up and charge into the flank of those skirmishers. His first movement roll was not enough, so he tried again, got the 5, and managed to make the rolls to get into their flank. So that's a 3 dice fight. He managed to push them way back there, drove them a long way back. They passed their discipline test though, but now he's putting a lot of pressure on this Roman flank. Last thing for the Pontic forces to do here was to try and recover their phalanx here, to recover from disorder. They needed an 8 or more and rolled a 10, so well done. And so here's how things stand now. Looking a little bit better for the Pontic forces here, although they've still got a bit of a gap in the middle of their line. For the Romans, choices. Obviously going with the cavalry on the left, right? So they start there. Unfortunately, the Pontic cavalry defended the attack, 4 equals 4, so nothing happened there. Against the Thureophoroi, they took a risk and rolled 1 dice, got a grind result with a 2, decided to try and roll that again, got a 4, not defended, and so they managed to push those Thureophoroi back. Here, trying to move the legion up into the gap here, managed to fail that roll, so that's no good. So the general had to do a 1 dice attack by himself, rolled a 6, good result, but then that was defended by the pike phalanx with a 6 as well. Over here, managed to turn the skirmishers around this time to face off against the cavalry, really just trying to protect the flank. Any time those skirmishers go against those cavalry in an attack, that's not so good, but at least they can probably hold those cavalry up. Okay, play passes to the Pontic forces now. So they have a 2 dice attack on the Roman legion here. Got a good result there. Managed to drive back the legion and the skirmishers behind them, pick up a setback card, but once again, the legions pass their discipline test. Phalanx fails its discipline test, so it has to follow up and goes into the face of the legions. Now that's breaking up the Pontic line a bit. We'll see how that plays out later. Now the general has a chance to charge into the flank here of the legion or into the skirmishers. Decides to go for the legion, rolls a 1 and then spends a point to re-roll that. Gets the 3, manages to get in. 2 dice attack, pushes them back. They don't actually go back any distance here. They roll a 1, so they stay where they are, but they do pick up a setback card and they pass their discipline test. Over here, a 1 dice attack on the general's legion does manage to push it back. pushes it back there. They just pass their discipline with a 6. The general is uninjured, but they do pick up a setback card. And finally over here, the Thureophoroi have a 2 dice attack on the Legion, so let's give that a go. They managed to get a good result with a 5 and drive the Legion way back into the cultivated area. The Legion here rolled discipline, failed on a 5, re-rolled, failed on a 4, and ended up disordered as a result. So not quite as bad as it could have been, and at least they're still kind of in line with the cavalry and the other Legion next to them. Here, the Pontic cavalry wanted to try and swing around and take advantage of that and slam into that Legion again that's already disordered. However, they failed their maneuver roll because they're in the zone of control of the cavalry to their right, the Roman cavalry there. So this is where things stood at the end of the Pontic turn. The Romans getting pushed back a little bit congested here, but at least the Romans still have a fairly solid looking line. To start out the Roman turn, they have a go at the cavalry again, do manage to drive them back quite a long way, and the cavalry fails their discipline test on a 3, takes the reroll and passes it just on a 7. Does pick up a setback card though. Then the General's Legion has a go against the Phalanx, a 2 dice attack, but unfortunately it's defended by the Phalanx. Next order of the day is to try and recover the disorder here. The first roll fails to recover that disorder, but they spend their valuable defense point again to re-roll it, get a 10, that's a pass. Okay, now over on the flank here, looking at these 2 fights on the very right flank here, these are no good for the Romans. It's going to be 2 dice the opponent chooses, the Pontic forces choose, so they just decide not to roll. They're just going to sit there and try and be a block to whatever the Pontic forces try and do. The Pontic forces, for their part, have a 3 dice attack here, get a good result here. The Romans, again, didn't give ground here. They rolled a 1 on the drive back. Did pass their discipline yet again. That's like their 4th or 5th pass here. Another setback card, though. And then the General has a go to try and clean up those skirmishes. Unfortunately, he rolls a stand result with a 3, so no joy there. Over here, the Thureophoroi and the cavalry want to try and line up a little bit more with things here. The cavalry wanted to sidle across, do an oblique move to get back towards the Roman cavalry. So it managed to turn around to face, but it couldn't go any further than that this turn. The pikes here have a 1 dice attack against the general. They roll a grind result, which is not defended. Now, phalanx in a grind result, they treat that as a stand, and the Romans defending treat a grind result as a stand as well. So even though this was a kind of a bad roll of a 2, this was just a face-off here. Next up, we have the Thureophoroi as the last kind of move of the turn, trying to swing around into the flank of the Legion here. They roll the movement points, and they roll 1 of their 2 checks to do the maneuver to turn. So they have to pass out of the zone of control, and they also have to make the turn. So unfortunately, they don't pass both of those. They needed a 3+, and 1 of those failed. So that's the end of the turn, and they don't get into the flank of the Legion. Passing to the Romans here, they have a 2 dice attack on the Thureophoroi. Unfortunately, it's a stand. Then the General's unit has a 1 dice attack against the pikes, rolls a grind, re-rolls it with his generalship point, rolls a grind again. Now, I'm not quite sure about this, but the rules for Phalanx say when you get a grind result, it's treated as a stand by the Phalanx, and if the opponent is battle trained, which the Legion is, it's a stand for them as well. It cancels out. That's a little bit unusual because normally the Romans, although they have that battle trained result, they only count grind on defense as something they can cancel. So I'm not quite sure about the rules. I might have to ask about this one. Maybe the Romans should have fallen back here. But anyway, we just played on as it was. Okay, so now play passes to the Pontic forces. Again, they have this 3 dice attack against the Legion. They roll a pushback, and they manage to push everything back here a little bit. Then the General tries to go in against the Legion. 2 dice attack, but unfortunately it's defended by the Legion. This Legion is doing a lot of good work here, holding up the Pontic left flank. In the center, a 3 dice attack on the Legion here is a stand result, so nothing's happening there. And then over here, the cavalry wanted to oblique move around to get into the face of the Roman cavalry here. Unfortunately, they didn't roll the movement points to do that. Now, at this stage, the Pontic forces were looking at the Roman setback cards. There were 8, and they thought, we've got some setbacks and a disaster. Maybe we'd better try and call Homunculus Est here to see if we can fatigue the Romans. So they decided to call it, and the Roman general decided not to use his strategy point to cancel that out. Revealed the cards, and it only totaled 7 when they needed 8 or more, the Roman break being 16. So benefit to the Romans here, they get to ditch the 3, and they are not fatigued, and so that's where we stand. So a failure there in that Homunculus Est call to fatigue the Roman army. So over to the Romans, 2 dice attack here on the Thureophoroi, managed to drive them back, pushes them back. They pass their discipline test, but they are picking up more setbacks. They try to bring the Legion in the field forward. Unfortunately, it fails its move. Then the general, 2 dice attack in here, pushes back the Phalanx. They pass their discipline though. Over here, not that favourable odds for the Romans, but they do have an opportunity here to get the skirmishers into the flank of the Pontic cavalry, and that's 2 versus 2 for the points here, so it's worth a shot. 1 dice attack, but unfortunately it's defended by the Pontic forces. And so next up, the Romans decided they wanted to try and charge this legion obliquely into the Thureophoroi here. So 6, they rolled plenty of movement points. They needed a 3+ on their maneuver roll to do the oblique move. Rolled a 2, used their last movement point on their strategy board, on their command board, sorry, and managed to get the points they need, get into the face of those Thureophoroi, give them a really strong pushback result. And that pushes them back, and they fail their discipline test there with double 1s. Not good. So that's a rout. They're going to be disappearing off the table, but they're also going to cause a discipline check for the cavalry behind them as they do that. And the cavalry fails as well, and they rout off the table. Oh no, the whole flank of the Pontic army has suddenly disappeared. So now looking down at the table, we've got a pike phalanx in the middle and 3 units on the Pontic left, which is in the top right of this picture, but the rest of the field belongs to the Romans. And the Pontic forces have picked up a lot of cards here. The Romans call Homunculus Est, and the Pontic general has no choice but to spend a strategy point to cancel that out. So over to the forces of Pontus. They've still got a chance here if they can kind of drive things back a bit. Unfortunately, their phalanx grinds against the Legion here. Both of the special rules here, so the battle trained of the Romans and the phalanx rule of the phalanx will cancel out that grind result. So just a stand. The general then only has a 1 dice attack here because he's flanked by the skirmishers. He gets a grind result as well. He can't cancel that out. So he gets driven back, passes his discipline test, but that's picking up another setback card for Pontic forces. And so that's a reversal of fortune, so that's where things stand. Now, the Romans are definitely going to call Homunculus Est here in the coming turn, but let's see if they can maybe give them 1 or 2 more cards before they do that. So they charge in here with the general, and again, we get that grind result. Not quite sure again how that one should work. So in this one, we just said, okay, let's call it a stand. Let's just go straight to Homunculus Est and see what happens. And when the points came up, there were 18 there, enough to defeat the Pontic forces. The remainder retires from the field, and the Romans win the day. So I hope you found that a little bit interesting. A Mithridatic Wars fight there between the Pontic forces and the Romans. A couple of rules things I'll need to check there. But for now, thanks for watching. I will see you again real soon.